Ah yes, Alhaitham. Known for being the Dendro on-field character, he can enable absurd amounts of team damage by setting up for Hyper Bloom with his fast Dendro application, while also dealing top-tier personal Dendro damage with also his fast Dendro application. And a kit that does a better job gluing everything together than whatever's holding my family together. Overall, he's a very strong character in the right hands. Or maybe also in the left hands, if you play him with both hands. I don't know about you, but when I'm playing Alhaitham, one of my hands always ends up busy doing something else. Alhaitham is one of those characters whose kits aren't exactly straightforward. It's not like complicated, but there are just some... Okay, yeah, for most Genshin players, it is complicated, because to understand how his kit works, it requires Genshin players to expose themselves to their worst fear: reading. As a result, there are a lot of, fake Alhaitham mains who just play him because he's hot and never bother to learn how to do it properly. Okay, yeah, to be fair, he is pretty hot though. I know, it's not my place to decide whether someone is a real Alhaitham main or not, but hear me out. Maining a character means you at least have some proficiency at playing that character, but these people I'm referring to have a negative score in that. Not only do they fail to make the most out of his kit, the way they play him just straight up disrespects his damage potential. I'm talking about those people who use his skill right after his burst, like, it just hurts to watch because, well done, you just wasted his entire burst, you donut. If you're gonna be playing him like that, you're much better off playing someone easier like Yoimiya. Huh, gotcha. You thought this was an Alhaitham video, but in fact, it's just more Yoimiya propaganda. God damn it, Gio, stick to the script. Uh-oh. Alright, so here's the thing. Alhaitham is a strong character, but Nahida can do a lot of things he can, but better. Pretty much the only thing he has over her is his own personal damage. So please, for the love of the Archons, include at least one Electro character on his team because he needs to trigger spread to do any significant damage. Yes, stop using him in Nilu Bloom teams. I have one person watching this video who's doing that, you know who you are. Yeah, stop that. Now that that's out of the way, we can talk about his damage. His biggest damage source is his projection attacks coming from his mirrors, so you gotta manage them. He can have up to 3 mirrors, he gains them in different ways, and he loses 1 mirror every 4 seconds. Landing a charged or a plunging attack gives him 1 mirror, and this effect has a 12-second cooldown. Casting his skill also gives him 1 mirror. If he has no mirrors when casting, it gives him 2 instead, but this won't really matter half the time. His burst consumes all mirrors and generates new mirrors depending on how many mirrors he has at the time of casting. If he has 3 mirrors, the burst won't generate any. If he has 0, the burst will generate 3. You can figure out the rest. Yes, at C6, his burst will always generate 3 regardless, but his cons are just kind of a joke. There are 2 ways to make use of his mirrors. The correct way, which is maintaining the max number of mirrors for as long as possible, and the wrong way, which is, well, literally any other way of playing him. The projection attacks are triggered by landing hits with his basic attacks, and behave differently depending on how many mirrors you have. They all do the same damage per hit, but the number of hits from each projection attack is equal to the number of mirrors you have. So if you have 3 mirrors, it's 3 hits. This is important because when you're triggering spread, you want to do it with fast hits. The more hits, the better. So that Alhaitham can spread as many cheeks, trigger spread as many times as possible. These hits also have a special ICD with a 2-hit rule instead of a 3-hit rule. So instead of triggering 1 spread per 3 hits in each projection attack, it'll start with 2 spreads in the first attack, then it'll alternate between 1 and 2. This attack also has a 12-second time rule, which means the hit rule won't reset until 12 seconds later. But the longest time you can maintain 3 mirrors is 12 seconds, so you can pretty much just pretend it doesn't have a time rule. Theo, what are you saying? 12 seconds? You lose 1 mirror every 4 seconds, so you drop to 2 mirrors. How do you stay at 3? I was just about to get to that. Let me finish. In order to maintain 3 mirrors, you need to obtain 3 mirrors, so how do you do that? His burst. Casting his burst at 0 mirrors gives you 3, after waiting for 2 seconds. Right, so to maintain 3 mirrors, you need to generate a new mirror either with a skill or a charged attack. You want to do this just before his first mirror expires, so around 4 seconds after getting your mirrors. So essentially, you're refreshing that mirror. But you want to make the most out of your mirror duration before refreshing it, so don't do it too early or you'll waste your mirror. After around another 4 seconds, repeat it with Alhaitham's other ability to refresh your mirror one more time, and congratulations, you maintain 3 mirrors for 12 seconds! So basically just space out his ability usage and don't use them all at once. Just stretch out as much mirror uptime as possible, just like how you wish Alhaitham would stretch you out in bed. It doesn't really matter which ability you use first to refresh his mirror. Using his skill first is easier to manage because it has a longer cooldown than his A1 passive, but triggering the passive first frees up the usage of charged attacks, so you can spam charged attacks afterwards, which is what you usually do on sword characters, without worrying about triggering its mirror generating effect at the wrong time, because, you know, you already triggered it. And it also allows you to perform a skill into a plunge, which triggers an extra instance of spread. If you use his skill first, performing a plunge will trigger his A1 passive way too close to his skill cast, and as we mentioned earlier, you want to avoid that. But hey, not everyone can count 4 seconds to refresh his mirror, especially with all the shit going on in combat, and that's fine, not even I do that. Because there's another way. Every 4-second time window has roughly enough time for 2 projection attacks, assuming you're consistently hitting your normal attacks to trigger these projections. So usually you can safely use your ability to refresh your mirror after every 2 projection attacks. If you do it correctly, all your projections should look like a rain of green blades, and it should happen 6 times. If you refresh it too late, you might trigger projection at 2 mirrors, which looks something like a spinning green star. This is not something you want to see, even though it reminds you of a certain other spinning projectile that we've all seen way too much of. If you refresh your mirror too early, it'll also expire too early, and you'll see that spinning green fuck earlier than you'd like. So yeah, timing your abilities is important with him. That's why it's so bad to use his skill right after his burst, because they both generate mirrors, so his whole 70 cost burst is wasted. I know it's tempting to use his skill and burst close together just like most other characters and call it a day, but
no, stop. Just calm down. Don't do it.
it's actually one of the worst things you can do while playing this character. It's like casting Yoimiya's burst during her skill duration, or casting on C6, Xiao's dash while his burst is active, or playing Hu Tao. Like in general. Alhaitham's burst hits more times the more mirrors you have when casting, so technically there is another way to play him, but his burst damage isn't really that good to begin with when compared to his projection attacks. Also, the projections are his way of generating particles, so it's clear which damage dealing method is superior. His burst is better used as just a way to set up 3 mirrors. There are some situations where you don't want to use his burst, like when you're almost done with a chamber and you just want to finish off some enemies. In that case, you can get from 0 to 2 mirrors by casting a skill, and then get the final mirror by performing a charge attack, right? Wrong. See, Alhaitham uses a sword, which means in order to get to a charged attack, he needs to perform a normal attack first. So you'll land a normal attack before you get your 3rd mirror, and that triggers a projection at 2 mirrors. And you know what that means. Alternatively, there's this better method where you hold a skill, which always allows for a plunging attack, which then results in 3 mirrors instantly, which only lasts for 4 seconds. But again, this is just used for finishing off a chamber that's almost done, or if you don't want to spend a full rotation on a wave of squishy enemies. Another tip is the 2-second swap trick. Look, I don't have a better name for it. After casting Alhaitham's burst, it takes 2 seconds to generate his mirrors. So instead of just doing nothing for 2 seconds waiting for his mirrors to appear, you can switch to another character and cast an ability before switching back to catch the mirrors, if you're quick enough. This is useful if you have an ability that doesn't really last long enough for Alhaitham's field time, like pre-C2 Shinobu's elemental skill. But be careful, if you don't switch back in 2 seconds, Alhaitham won't get his mirrors. This usually isn't a big problem, but it matters quite a lot if you get staggered in the process or if you have high ping. So only do that if you're confident, or it's gonna make you want to reset. Alright, so that should be the end of it. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. I could have just told you what to do with him with the skill timings and stuff, but I think it's better to explain his kit and help people understand it better so they know the reason behind the way we play him. Yeah, he's a bit more difficult to play than most other characters, but if you just use 1% of your brain while playing him, you should be fine. That's all. See ya.